Hello, folks. Welcome, welcome. Welcome to the webinar. As you're joining, just go find the chat and introduce yourselves. This is the first webinar in the run-up to GPMF this year. And one of the wonderful things about GPMF is that it's a great opportunity to network with your peers. So jump into the chat, drop your LinkedIn profile in there, introduce yourself, where you are, what you do, and go connect with your colleagues. Steve Jenner is on here. I'm delighted to see Steve. Steve is referenced in this session quite a bit, so it'll be great. Great to see Steve, and would love to see any comments that you have, Steve. Obviously, as we go through here, you are in fact the undisputed king of benefits management. So I'm now really nervous. Not to worry. So do jump in there, introduce yourself, where you're from, and what you do. If you're project manager, PMO lead, that kind of thing, kind of projects you work on. And as I say, feel free to drop your LinkedIn profiles in there, because networking is part of what this is all about. So welcome to this webinar. My name is Stuart Easton. And it's a real honor to kick off the first webinar of the season, the GPMF season. This is the first time that we've kind of done a big series of webinars building up to the big event itself in September. And I think Badr very kindly let me kick it off because I'm not going to be able to be in Riyadh in September. Unfortunately, the conference itself is happening while I have to take my children to university. I have twin boys, and they both start university that weekend. So I will be driving up and down the UK, taking them to the UK, taking them to university. So I'm sorry I won't be in Riyadh, but at least we get to do this, right? So this will be fun. Now, if you're new to GPMF, the Global Project Management Forum, what is it? So you can go to the website there. It's huge. It's the biggest, and in my opinion, frankly, the best project management community event conference in the world. The very best speakers from around the world attend. There are workshops, there are hands-on masterclasses, there are all kinds of talks and exhibitors to go and attend. So you can jump across to the website. It's happening, as you can see there, in September, 19th, 20th, 21st of September in Riyadh. And so if you haven't already, go grab your tickets. It's free to attend. And then some of the workshops that are kind of premium workshops and things like that, for which there's a small fee. So go grab your tickets and put it in your diary, block out those 3 days. It's an amazing 3 day event for anybody who's interested in project management. Now, today we're going to be focusing on how to turn investment into value, into business value. And so, why should you listen to me, right? Well, I do a bunch of this, right? I talk on stages around the world. There are other people on the session today who also do that. So I'm a regular speaker, blogger, and we have a YouTube channel around portfolio management and PMO issues. And I also guest lecture at various universities from time to time, most recently University of Southern California, but I've also taught at University of Vilnius, University of Oxford, places like that. And the topics that I'm most interested in are around value, delivering value, getting value from portfolios of projects. So it's all about portfolio management, benefits management, and how maximizing the value and the return on investment from projects. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Now you're going to see these QR codes several times. The one on the left is for the book on benefits management that you can download. This is, as you'll see in a second, this is kind of the beginner's guide. If you want if you want to go a little bit deeper, I would absolutely recommend Managing Benefits. Steve, if you're able to drop a link to that into the chat, that would be a really cool thing. That is the Bible that I use when I'm trying to think things through around benefits. So that's Steve Jenner's book. But if you just want a super quick intro to benefits management, the QR code on the left is it. And then I'd invite anybody that really wants to get going with benefit management to book an hour with me, and I'll happily work with you around, building a business case, trying to figure out how do you get the organization to buy in, all that kind of good stuff, which you kind of need to do before you drive into doing too much planning of how to implement benefit management. Those are going to come up again and again as we go through here. Today's goal is to get you from white belt, right? So I don't know anything, to orange belt, right? So having some knowledge, right? Enough to be able to do something, right? You can get started. You got an idea what the rules are, and that's where we're aiming for today. We're not going to be going for black belt. If you want black belt, buy Steve's book, do the certification, and he'll get you there. All right, so we're not aiming for black belt today. And this is the book that I was mentioning. So Steve, I don't just mention it because you happen to be on the session. I do this every time. So if you really want to dive deep, this is the book I would recommend. I've seen lots of copies of this book around the world, and every single one of them has been so well used. Some of them are falling apart. They've been that well used. And that's a sign of a good book to me. So it's a really practical. And if you want to do the certification, you can certainly do that as well. And the reason I put this up is because one of Steve's most famous sound bites is, benefits are the only thing that matters. And I couldn't agree more, right? This is the way I look at it. Some of you know me, you've seen me in the ducks and everything else. We're going to be very ducky today. But and the reason is because nobody cares about your projects. Nobody cares about your ducks, right? They're ugly ducks. They don't care about your Gantt charts. They don't care about your burn down reports. They don't care about agile or waterfall, right? The business really doesn't care about your ducks. They don't care if you have a boy duck or a girl duck. They just want eggs. They want the value. They want the benefits from the project, the business benefits from the project. Okay. They're not interested in the project itself or the deliverables. It's all about the egg. And which is why we have ducks everywhere in this presentation, which is just a fun way to kind of make it engaging. But the message is a serious message, right? It's all about the egg. It's not about the duck at all. The benefit is all that matters. And why do we care about benefits right now? Well, if you're like most people around the world, it feels like change is happening faster and faster. There's a lot of people from Saudi Arabia here, Vision 2030, 35, and so on, right? The change is happening faster and faster, but we're not getting more money and resources to do it. Very often we're finding less, right? Less resource to get stuff done. And if that's you, the only way that you can really deliver that, deliver more with the same or fewer resources, is by focusing on delivering benefits, right? Optimizing for benefits, because that's all the business cares about. They don't care how many projects you start. They don't care about how wonderful your methodology is. They just care about the benefits. So by focusing on the benefits, we can drive down the waste. So here's a really interesting statistic. 20% of projects are so badly aligned with the goals of the organization that it should just be stopped in a typical portfolio, right? So 20% of what you're working on is waste. Wow. Well, surely we can fix that. Another thing that I hear from executives around the world is that, they're making all this investment in projects, but they never see the business benefit actually happen, right? They never see it materialize. And research shows that only about 37%, there are some reports a little higher, some a little lower. This is a bit of work from the University of Oxford, but about 37% of projects actually deliver the benefits. That means 63% don't. That's scary. And then the third thing that we can do to improve things is to accelerate delivery, right? Something like 40% of projects are late. Again, that's the same piece of research. But if we could accelerate delivery, we can deliver more projects, which means more benefits. Okay. So this is why we need to focus on benefits. So let me just get rid of the zoom bar. There we go. That's better. Okay. So let's look at those three dimensions again, right? There's alignment with strategy. So 20% waste. So the dark blue line, that's the 80% that kind of align with strategy, or at least they're not badly aligned. And then there's 20% of the projects we're doing that are not well aligned. But we know how to fix this. Good project prioritization can fix that, right? You ask the question, we're going to go through this in more detail. This is just a quick summary. Good prioritization can fix that. Okay. Alignment with strategy. Oh dear, that should be delivering benefits. Apologies. Again, delivering benefits. Only 40%-ish, 37% are delivering benefits. When you do benefits management properly, what the research suggests, this is PMI data, that you should get about 38% more projects hitting the benefits than before, right? So we go from here to here. And then speed of delivery, what the research shows that if you manage your resources well, and I'll show you, I'll talk about it later on. When you manage your resources well, you can deliver between 30 and 50% more work from the same resources, right? You can accelerate delivery by 30 to 50%. So when you put that together, it means that you go from here, right? That cube shows how much value you're delivering, right? It's alignment with strategy multiplied by how many actually deliver the benefits. That should be benefits, apologies, and then speed of delivery, right? We go from here to here. And this big cube is roughly, if you use that 20%, 35%, 30 to 40% more in each of these dimensions, this big cube is twice as big as the small cube. That's why we care about benefits management, right? Because we can deliver twice the value to the organization if we do this well. But very few organizations do actually do it well, right? So benefits management is so much more than just benefits realization. It's not just getting to the end of the project and saying, "Ooh, did we deliver the benefits?" Right? That's not benefits management. Okay. It's about aligning with goals, making sure that we're delivering benefits from every project and that we're accelerating delivery. When you do that, you deliver much more value to the business. So there are lots of definitions. This is the APM, PMI's definitions of what benefits management is. I find these rather boring, and so this is how I think of it. Benefits management is the process of maximizing the benefits of the whole portfolio. Now, the last couple of words are really important. It's not just about delivering benefits for a project. It's about delivering benefits for the whole portfolio. It's about maximizing the benefits from the whole portfolio. Right? Now, that's for many people, that's a different mindset. Right? If you're PMI certified, if you're PMP, you've been trained in all these methodologies and they're all great. But historically, none of that has been about how do we maximize the benefits, and certainly not at the portfolio level. Yet, if you want to deliver the maximum value, that's exactly what you need to do. And another way of saying that is we want to maximize the return on investment. And one quick caution, we're going to cover how to do this, but is that this word return on investment, people often think of as being purely financial, right? The financial benefit, cost savings or extra revenue minus the cost of the project divided by the cost. That's your ROI. But actually, what we're going to talk about today is how we maximize the ROI, the benefits divided by cost. Because the benefits could include some things that aren't financial, right? It might be about market share, it might be about environmental impact, or it might be about societal impact. And this is so important that the NHS, this is the National Health Service in the UK, even published a book on this, how to think about return on investment in an environment where a lot of the value is non-financial. So we're trying to maximize ROI, but the R might not just be financial. Now, there are lots of frameworks that talk about benefit management. They're all good for different reasons. And they all fundamentally boil down to something like this, right? So this is a simplified version of what most of those frameworks say, right? What they basically say is you've got to define your goals as a business, select the portfolio that's aligned with the goals, so select the projects that really contribute the most, make a plan to deliver benefits, not a plan to deliver projects, but to deliver benefits. They're not the same thing. Then you have to actually execute the plan, right, to realize those benefits, and then sustain those benefits into the organization, right, over time. And so I think of this as being sort of three chunks. There's what we traditionally call portfolio management. There's project management and change management. And then there's kind of a business reporting, business culture kind of thing going on at the end here to sustain it. So before we get into this, let's very quickly define what a benefit is. So this is from the UK Cabinet Office, who published Managing Successful Projects, MSP. This has gone on to form the backbone of lots of various different standards around the world. And so it's quite a good starting place. So they talk about benefits as being a measurable improvement resulting from an outcome that's seen as an advantage by one or more stakeholders, and is aligned with objectives, organizational objectives. Now, it's interesting. There's all these different words in here: measurable improvement, outcome, stakeholders, organizational objectives. Nowhere in that definition does it say project, right? The ducks aren't in that statement. I guess they are. They're in the outcomes. The duck delivers the outcomes, right? What this statement is about is the egg, right? What this is basically saying is that benefits management is asking the question, how do we maximize the eggs, right? How do we maximize the value in the organization? So let's start off with kind of the value chain, right? To help define benefits. Definitions are tricky things, especially when you have an audience that's not a native English speaker. So I'm going to cover this by giving you a couple of examples. So where most project managers think is here. They think in outputs, right? In this case, it's some training. It's some cybersecurity training, right? The output is the training. There's a little project that ran up to it. We planned it. We organized it. We did everything. And then we delivered it. We delivered the training. Hurrah! As a project manager, I've done my job. No, you haven't, right? All you've done is you've delivered an output. What that output has done is it's enabled an outcome, right? As an organization, we're now able to do something that we couldn't do before. In this case, we're able to spot phishing attempts, right? So a fraud attempt. But even that's not the benefit, right? That's just a capability that we've got. The real benefit is that the criminals didn't get our money, right? They didn't steal our money. All right, so I like to think of it in these three steps. Actually, Steve's on here. He sometimes, or usually simplifies it down to two steps. But what's a benefit? This is a whole discussion that can take a long time. So to keep it simple, I like to think of it in these three steps, right? You have the output, which is the thing you did the project. It's the output of the project. It's the artifacts, the deliverables, the features. The outcome, what's the capability that we now have, the new capability that the organization has, and then the benefit, right, is the business impact of that. So let's try another example. Okay, in a hospital, we deliver a new X-ray machine. The X-ray machine is working. That's the output. Hurrah! The outcome is that we can now take faster X-rays, right? That's the capability that we now have. But the benefit is that patients are treated faster. That makes them happier. That's good. Better satisfaction, frees up beds quicker in the hospital, and it leads to better health outcomes. Now, you'll notice we've actually got several benefits here coming from one project. And that's okay, that's good, right? But we need to know what they are up front, and we need to kind of think them through. So, excuse me. One of Steve's other fun statements is start with the end in mind, right? So that's we're going to start thinking about the goals, right? So to maximize the benefits for the organization, we need to know what the goals of the organization are, not the goals of the project yet, but the goals of the organization. And this is a whole fun little process, right? So start with the end in mind. We're going to start there. And we're going to start first looking at this portfolio management piece, define the goals and then selecting your portfolio. So we'll whiz into this. So I gave you this number earlier. This is PMI data, 20% of projects so badly aligned, they should just be stopped. That's a great definition of waste. And, I just want you to think for a second, right? If you were at home and 20% of your income you were just wasting on things, right? Just silly things that didn't make you happy or didn't keep your family healthy, right? Would that be okay? Of course not. You would do something about it. So as an organization, this level of waste is absolutely not okay. And this level of waste comes from, because every organization prioritizes. Sometimes it doesn't feel like it, but they do. Every organization decides which projects get the resources and get executed. And these are probably the four most common methods that I see out there. What we call the loudest voice. This is just people shouting loudly, or more, people with power come and say, just do my project because I'm very important. There are financial return on investment or net present value models, financial ways of prioritizing. Moscow. Anybody heard of Moscow? Give me a quick thumbs up if you heard of Moscow. It stands for must do, should do, could do, won't do. But actually, that's not prioritizing. That's just the categories. This is a visualization technique. How do we decide what is must do? How do we decide what is should do? Well, in most organizations, the way you decide that is through the loudest voice, people just shouting at each other and arguing. And if you're really good, you maybe built a magic spreadsheet where you've put some criteria in, scored your projects to try and prioritize. These methods are what has given us 20% waste. Okay, so they're not empirically, we need to do better, right? We need to do better than these methods. And so there's a bunch of decision science out there. There's a whole bunch of academics that research this. They spend their whole lives, their whole careers trying to figure out how do we do prioritization better. And there's a method that sort of comes out on top there called AHP, Analytic Hierarchy Process. It's actually mentioned in Steve Jenner's book. It works really well because it's particularly good at working out what the contribution, what the strategic alignment, what the contribution to your goals is of every project, but doing it in a way where the executives buy into it. And both of those are really important, it turns out, if you want to actually reduce waste. So the summary, we don't have time to go over AHP and what it is and how it works. This is the QR code that I mentioned earlier. There is a prioritization ultimate guide in these resources that are freely available to you. And that will walk you through what AHP is and why it matters and how it works and all that kind of good stuff. We're not going to do that today. Really just wanted to highlight that there is this thing called AHP that works better and can help eliminate that 20% waste. Moving on. What you can do and what you should do, however, coming out of this session, is sit down and ask your organization, ask your leadership, ask yourself, read your strategy documents, and figure out what do I think the big goals are for the organization. Usually it's something like growing revenue, environmental impact, customer satisfaction, costs, financial goals, that kind of thing, right? And then for each one of those, you can break them down into sub goals. So if this was revenue, this might be finding new customers. This might be selling more stuff to the same customers and so on. And see if you can come up with this list of what are the main goals of the organization. Usually there are sort of 3 to 5, and then 2 or 3 underneath each one of those of what are the sub goals. So this is what it might look like if you were an ambulance service. You've got response time, safety, cost, quality of care are the big goals, and then these are the sub goals. These are in a way these are how we measure, excuse me, are we delivering on this? So it's the average response time, the maximum response time, call answer time. These are the lower goals, the smaller goals that we have. And these basically map into the benefits that you want from your projects, right? So when we talk about a benefit is a contribution to one or more of these goals, right? That's, if you remember in that very wordy definition, it was about, a business benefit that comes from an outcome that has a measurable impact on a goal that's important to the business. All right, so these are the goals. If you don't have a map like this, then you can't do benefits management, right? It's really simple. So first thing I would recommend everybody does, if you don't already have it, is create a map like this. And the QR code will come up again, and there's a whole bunch of templates and things like that to help you do it. So I would go there. And once you've got those goals written down, you turn them into a set of criteria, weighted criteria, that you can use to score your projects using AHP, right? So these are some screenshots from our software, but you can find templates online to do AHP or however you want to do it, or just do it in a spreadsheet. Okay, but the important thing is that you're taking your organizational goals, you're turning them into criteria. You're weighting those criteria and scoring your projects. And that way you know what the contribution is of each project to your goals. So homework, again, this is the same QR code, so they'll all take you to the same page. Go and interview some members of your leadership. Go and interview your peers, and then fill in that form. Create your own set of your goals, and then play them back to your leadership team and ask them, do these feel right? Okay. And again, if you don't know where you're going, you don't know what the goals of the organization are, then it's impossible to maximize the benefit. Right. So that's the first thing that I would recommend everybody does if you haven't already done it. And then how do we actually go ahead and select a portfolio? Okay, so we've scored our projects, or rather we weight our criteria. And then then what you want to do is kind of publish this and say, well, these are the goals that are really important to us. And then have an ideation campaign. Actually ask the organization, what projects, what do you think we can do that would help make a difference to these goals? What the research tells us is that the middle of the organization, right, all those middle managers, they're the people that know how to get value out of the organization. They're the people who know what's broken. Not the senior executives. It's the middle managers who know that stuff. So we want to take this strategic level statement, which is the weighted criteria, and use that to drive an ideation process and ask the mid-level managers, what are the ideas that you have that will help us deliver the benefits? Capture them through a nice, simple project request page, and then take them through a process and it doesn't need to be this short, but a process where you're going to evaluate them, knock projects out, score them, but do it in stage gates. right? So don't try and score everything and do deep, deep business case for every single idea, right? Check the idea first. If it's a silly idea, throw it away, right? Don't invest any time in it. Just throw it away. But the good ideas we're going to invest time in, evaluate, and then we can start to figure out which group of projects. Once we've scored them, we understand the contribution of every project. So it's what group of projects then delivers the maximum value. So you need some kind of structured intake if you're going to do that well. And you absolutely need some kind of scoring mechanism. As I say, AHP is the one that works the best. So again, in the free materials, there's a sample intake form. This isn't meant to be perfect. It's meant to give you an idea. It's meant to get you started to start collecting business cases. And if you're not doing that today, I would suggest you start quite quickly collecting business cases for every single project. Now, the point of doing all of this is so that we can pick the group of projects that maximize the benefits while staying inside our constraints, right? Our goal isn't really about be on budget. It's not even, it's not about maximizing utilization of our resources. It's about how do we maximize the benefits while staying within our constraints, budget and people, that kind of thing. And so there's a really important idea here, right? The staying within your resources piece is really important. So when you add projects, right, you add more load, you add projects, you get more benefit, right? This is the amount of benefit delivered. You get more benefit. But at some point, your people start to get so busy and your projects start competing for resources. And then adding more projects beyond there doesn't add value, it destroys value. People spend more and more time fixing problems and fighting for resources and updating people that your productivity drops off. And it drops off really quickly. And this usually happens at around about 80 to 85% utilization rate. Okay. So if your people are utilized more than that, you've got a problem. And most organizations are somewhere over here, right? But when you use AHP, right, first of all, we have a higher hill because we've eliminated a bunch of that waste. And what we can do is we can use that to say no to projects, or at least to say not yet, and to work out what group of projects puts us on top of the hill, maximum value, given the constraints that we have. When you've scored your projects, you can see which ones add most value, and you can say no or not yet to the ones that are lower value, that have less contribution. And there are tools now, Transparent Choice is one of them, but there are tools out there that can help you figure out which combination of projects is up at the top. And just to reiterate, right, this is about eliminating up to 20% waste, right? So this is an instant boost. Okay, how do we accelerate project delivery? Okay, this is all based on something called theory of constraints. If anybody's interested in learning more, I would recommend reading a book by a guy called Mike Hannon on this topic if you're interested in learning more. But it's also covered in Steve's book on portfolio management. So the idea is, this is a really simple portfolio. We've got 3 projects. And we start all 3 projects at the same time because our executives are shouting at us and telling us to do it. So we do. We start project 1, jump to project 2, project 3, back to project 1, 2, 3. And then we hand it off to the next team and the next team. And eventually we deliver some value. All the way over here, we eventually deliver some value. But the problem is that when you do this, when you're task switching like this, you're losing capacity, right? You're inefficient. Up to 40% of your capacity is lost due to task switching, right? So just think about your own life, right? When you've got 15 things you're trying to do all at once, you know you're being inefficient when you're jumping between them and giving, you're having to give people 10 different updates every day. And, your time just gets lost and you're not productive. Same thing happens in the portfolio when your delivery resources are hopping around from project to project. So, what's the alternative? Well, instead of doing this, let's do this. Let's focus on project one and then only start project two when we know we've got resources to deliver it, and only start project three when we know we've got resources to deliver it. Now, there's a couple of really cool things have happened here. First of all, we've delivered these projects earlier, so we're getting more value. The second really cool thing is that we now, because our people aren't task switching, we get our 40% capacity back, which means we get to deliver more projects. Now, what the research tells us is that when you do this and you do it well, you get between 30 and 50% more velocity, 30 to 50% more projects done using the same resources. Think about that for a second. You could, if you use these sorts of techniques, you could accelerate and deliver more business value, 30 to 50% more business value from the same resources. And again, there are tools from Transparent Choice and others that can help you optimize your portfolio to do this. All right, so we've done the first bit. Now let's start thinking about, we've talked about which projects, and at the portfolio level, if we reorganize how we deliver, the order in which we deliver, and we stagger our projects, we're going to get more projects complete. Now we need to make sure that we actually land the benefits for each project. Okay, so this is all at the portfolio level. We're now going to the project level to see how we can deliver more. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through, we're going to look at project management, change management, benefits, governance, and measurement and realization. We're going to go through those 4 steps. And we all know, everybody on this call knows how to do project management. I don't need to spend any time telling you guys how to manage projects. But there are some things you do differently when you have a benefits focus. And I'm going to focus on that. Okay. So back to Steve, start with the end in mind. And for a project, it starts with the business case, right? So we should be writing down, why this project, right? So what's the pain we're fixing? What are the benefits, costs, risks, that kind of thing. But when you have a more benefits mindset, you probably want a slightly bigger business case, right? So the why and the costs, that's fine. But the benefits, we're going to go into a bit more detail. We're not just going to say, oh yeah, we're going to grow revenue. We're going to say, well, we're going to grow revenue by this much, and we're going to support customer acquisition, but like this way, right? And what that contribution looks like. Risks, we're going to do a bit more work on some of those risks, particularly around stakeholders. I'll come to that in a second. And we probably want to think about change management right up front, right? Before we ever get into the project. Is there anything in the change management? Are there any impact on those stakeholders, for example, that would put the benefit at risk that we should be thinking about in the business case? Okay, so it starts off by really going from business case to benefit plan, right? Think about this as a tool to help you think about, what do I need to do to land the benefit before you even begin the project. So it might look something like this, right? Where you've got a benefit register for your project, where you have benefit 1, 2, 3. You've got a description. What's the goal? What's the baseline? How achievable is it? Who's the owner? And so on. Okay. And then on top of that, it's a really good idea, I think, to spend some time thinking about the stakeholders within a project. So here's the benefit that was in the benefit register. So what are the processes and people that are affected, right? What do we need to change, and who's affected by this project that we're going to do to achieve this benefit? Now, some of those people are going to be beneficiaries. They're going to be happy, right? They're going to be the people who benefit from this. Then there are people who participate, but they don't really care, right? It doesn't really affect them. Their life doesn't change. But then there are going to be some people who are the casualties of this project, right? Whose life gets more difficult because of this project. And by doing this stakeholder analysis up front, we can figure out who are the ones that we really need to work on with a change management plan. We can work out who are the stakeholders who are most affected, positively, negatively. We can think about how do we manage that change. And that might be training, communication, process redesign, etc. But especially it's about the with them. What's in it for me with them? And particularly those people who are going to be harmed by the project, whose lives get more difficult. You need to think about the change management plan for them because they can kill the benefit. They can kill the benefit. They can withhold resources. They can withhold expertise. They can not adopt the solution that you put in place. If they don't adopt it, you don't get the benefit. So really doing that stakeholder work up front lets you identify where are the biggest risks coming from the stakeholders so that you can start to address them. So, in terms of project management, right, we know how to manage risks and then there's all the normal project management risks, but now we're explicitly saying, hey, let's think about the stakeholders and then we go through and we score our risks and you create a risk register and so on. You guys know how to do that. I'm not going to tell you how to do that. So again, there's a simple template that you can download at the end. So we've planned for the benefits. Now we're going to do the project, execute the project. And the big difference, I think, to me, at a simple level anyway, between normal project management and benefits project management is in the change management and the governance. Okay. So let's look at those independently. So the change management. So if the project is we're going to build a bridge, right? Change management is making sure that we've got the signs and the railings on the bridge so that the people can actually use the bridge safely. All right. So the change management is about helping the people use the bridge safely or adopt the bridge. Okay. And it starts with understanding the benefit for each of those for the project, who are the stakeholders, convert it into risk like we talked about, and then having that plan. And the plan is really built around this idea of what's in it for me, and what do I need to change in order to enable people to adopt the outputs of the project and turn them into benefits, right? To take the outputs, turn them into outcomes, and then that materializes as benefits when people use those outcomes. So, so it's about going through these steps and being really explicit about this, engaging change management as a process. If you don't have a change management team, go and read about change management and figure out how you can implement that in your organization. And then the governance is all about this guy, the sponsor, right? The sponsor is ultimately accountable for the benefit. That means that they should be able to make decisions. They should be able to affect resources and so on. Now, for many people, this is what they think of as governance. It's the process police. We're going to come in and we've got a methodology. Are you following the methodology? Because that's what we mean by governance, right? Is this methodology and everybody's got to follow it. And unfortunately, the research says that this kind of compliance-centric governance has little to no impact on the business outcomes. It can help you deliver projects on time. It can help you deliver them on budget, but it has almost no effect on the benefits, assuming that you've got a basic level of project management maturity in place, right? If you've got no project management maturity in place, you need to spend some time on that, right? But assuming you've got the basics of project management in place, this kind of focus on compliance doesn't really drive benefits. What does drive benefits is focusing on making sure that we've got clear decision-making authority in the project manager. We know what the project manager can decide, what the sponsor can decide, what the portfolio board can decide. And that all of those decisions are focused on the benefits, not on the project, not on the outputs, but on the benefits. And then the project management and the PMO team should be curating, they should be filtering out the noise so that the decision makers know which decisions are the most important decisions that are going to help support the benefit. Okay. And then focusing all of that around the key decisions in the project. When you do these things, governance becomes much better. And typical PPM tools, in my view, deliver far too much data and noise about projects, and they don't deliver enough visibility around benefits. So I always encourage people to think of dashboards like this, where you have very clear, what's our progress towards our benefit? What are the deliverables that are going to contribute, the milestones that are going to add to the benefit? And what's the status of those, right? So that we can focus on this red one here because, it's a medium-sized benefit, and this yellow one because it's a large benefit. But we're not going to worry about this one because it's quite a small benefit right over here. We're not going to worry about this one here for now. Okay. So it's about focusing on reporting on benefits. What are the decisions we need to make to turn this from yellow, or decisions or actions we need to take to turn this from red to green, and so on. Right. So it's a subtly different way of thinking. We're not reporting on tasks, and maybe not even project RAG status. That's on page 2 or page 3. But page 1 should be all about the benefit. And don't forget to report that at the portfolio level as well, because if you remember, a lot of the value is being driven at this portfolio level, and the project bit is about implementing that. Quick adjustment around hopefully how you think about assurance. Again, within governance, most people think of it as a compliance audit, right? So you're turning over stones, you're looking under the stones, and you're trying to find the horrible monster, and then say, you're not complying with our process, right? Sometimes that's important if you have regulatory things you have to do, but in terms of project benefits, that's not what adds the value. What you should be doing in assurance is focus on collecting the information to support decision making. Okay, so there's no right way to do assurance. If you're doing assurance, if you're collecting information that supports decision making for that executive sponsor, then you're doing it right for your organization. So it's about asking yourselves, what are the decisions we need to make? What are the key decisions? And what information is going to give the decision maker the confidence to make that decision? That's where you want to be focusing your assurance effort. Of course, it can also help project managers. So for example, doing a risk audit where the assurance team, maybe once every 2 weeks, they come in, they do a quick risk audit, and they say, oh, look at this. Did you know that there are 3 of your key risks that nobody's touched for the last month? Should we do something about that? That would be helpful. So think about, what are the things that you could do from an assurance point of view that would help and support the project manager, especially identifying risks that they haven't seen. And when you do that, assurance becomes a really powerful tool in protecting the benefit. Okay, so again, this isn't really about project management. This is more a PMO thing. But it's really important if you want to maximize the return from the portfolio. And then the final bit is measuring the value. Okay. And everybody always says, oh, yeah, you've got to measure the benefits. You've got to measure the benefits. One thing to remember is that benefits are tricky to measure sometimes. Sometimes it's easy, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes they emerge over time. And so what you can do is you can use proxies or leading indicators. So what do I mean by that? Well, if my goal is, let's imagine I work for a big software company and my goal is to grow revenue. That's the benefit. But my sales cycle is a year. How can I measure whether I've done a good job or not in the first 6 months? Well, I can measure how many new leads are we getting? Are those leads converting? Right? So you can always be looking for those leading indicators that you can measure that'll tell you whether or not you're on track to deliver the benefits. And then, measure it over time, continue to track it over time so that you can report to the executive team on benefits realized, not on projects completed. Because remember, they don't care about the duck, they care about the egg. Last little bit. Yeah, we're nearly there. We should squeeze it in. How do we sustain the value? We delivered the benefit. Then what happens? Well, we've got to hand the project over to BAU, to the business people to run the project, the business as usual, if you're not native English speaker. Business as usual, it's the operations team. right? So we hand the project over to them and they do something with it, right? Hopefully, if we've done our change management right, they start using, let's say it's a piece of software, they start using the new software and we start getting the benefits. And if our benefit is that we want to increase sales, then we need to make sure that our business reporting is set up so that we don't expect sales to stay flat. We expect sales to get better. So we're increasing the goal for the salesperson by the amount that we've spent on the benefit. The logic here is you asked me for money so you could do this project to grow sales. I'm going to hold you accountable for growing sales, right? It's really simple. So making sure that you have a tie-in to the reporting part of the business, and that as those projects are the outputs are delivered, the outcomes are delivered, then we start tracking to see if the benefit materializes, and that means that you have to do some kind of reporting. Now, in some cases, the reporting can be very difficult, and so you might do surveys or just go and ask people who are using the product, are you getting this benefit? Right? It's not always possible to automate it or even economic to automate it. But that's only the start. Okay, this lets us answer the question of, did the project enable the organization to get benefits? Yes. But then what I would recommend is that you do heartbeat reviews every 6 months, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, something like that, where you go and you say, okay, are we still getting that benefit? Is there anything that, we've learned something since it went live? Is there anything more we can do to make the benefit even better? Is the benefit starting to decay? Is it starting to tail off? If so, why? How do we fix it? So that we can maintain that benefit for longer. All right. So this is just as important as measuring it in the first place. And who does this? Sometimes it might be the PMO. It might be something. It might be a strategy office. It might be business transformation office. But somebody needs to own that process because your sponsor is busy with running the business, right? They're not going to remember in 6 months to come back and do this. So the PMO or a strategy office or somebody should own this review process. And you should always want to be pulling this back to a whole report to the executive team at the portfolio level that says, hey, we've spent $100 million on projects. We've delivered $300 million worth of benefits and helped us achieve the following goals. It's at the portfolio level that we can make sure we're allocating resources effectively. You can't do that at the project level, right? Projects share resources. So that's a portfolio level thing. So we need to be reporting back to portfolio all the time. And when you do this, we also need to this is helping us maintain support from the executive team. If we are reporting back to the executive team saying, we as a project community have delivered $300 million of revenue, $200 million of cost savings, and a 2,000 ton of carbon dioxide reduction in emissions, then they kind of look at that and they go, wow, that's cool because we only spent $100 million to do that. You guys are great. And I'd be really interested to hear if how many of you right now, your executive teams look at the project delivery organization and say, yeah, you guys are really great, right? In my experience, not too many say that. Most are struggling. Something like 72% of PMOs are called into question by their executive team. Right? So roughly 3/4 of PMOs are under pressure at any one time. So having this portfolio view, it's not enough to do benefit management. You then have to play the success back to the organization to keep everyone focused on the benefit, which is what this feedback loop is for down here. It helps, lessons learned, build a culture, reinforce the fact that benefits matter. So my friend Laura Barnard talks about the yeah, but monster, right? So you hear something exciting, you think, yeah, that sounds great. And then this monster crawls up on your shoulder and he says, "Yeah, but that won't work here." Well, I got to tell you, it will. Right? I had a conversation with Steve Jenner a year and a half ago, I think it was, Steve, where we talked about benefit management. How do you get it started? And Steve said, "Do you know, the best way is just to start, right? Don't worry about a great big plan. Just start, just do something, show an improvement, just get started. Don't worry about the yeah, but monster, right?" So be brave, take the brave pill, get out there, try something. And my first recommendation generally is define the goals and the sub goals. So and because then at least you understand what benefits the organization wants to achieve. Fix your intake process so you don't have too many projects, right? If you can fix one thing, fix that. That will have an immediate large effect on your ability to execute if you can stop overloading your teams. And then the third thing would be to focus on moving from a business case to a benefits plan. Okay, just go pick your favorite project manager, right? Whoever it is in your organization that's, you know who they are, right? They're the ones who are always the first to say, "Yeah, I'll try that." They're always the first to give you feedback when something's working, and they're also the first to give you feedback when it's not working, right? Go find that project manager, sit down with them and work through one, maybe two projects and turn the business case into a benefits plan and then follow that plan through. When it works, use that feedback loop to show everyone else, "Hey, look, this worked. This made a difference. It's not perfect. We've got some fine tuning to do." Yeah, I love that. Keep reassessment right at every stage. Feedback, learn from it, improve it. But these three steps. This is about knowing where you're going. This is about fixing overload of your people, which is a really quick win. And then this is about actually executing. Go find someone to take that journey with you once or twice and prove that it works. That's how I would begin. So there we go. That's a lot to get through in an hour, right? That's a huge amount. If you want to take your time and go through it again, um, scan this QR code, download the book, and the book has pretty much everything we just talked about in there, and you can take your time and go through it in a little bit more detail. If you are wanting to get started but struggling to figure out how do I do that in my organization, as part of GPMF, I have a certain number of slots that I've agreed to do where you can book an hour with me and I'll work through that with you. So use this QR code and you can go and do that. So if you want to go from theory into practice, scan that code, book a meeting, let's talk. With that, I just want to thank the GPMF team. I do this every year when I'm on stage. When you're if you haven't been to GPMF, some of those stages are pretty big. And when you're on there and people are very polite in Saudi Arabia, right? They always applaud you at the end. And I always say the applause isn't for me, it's for all of the people, the hundreds of people who volunteered their time to organize, run the GPMF event. It is, in my view, the best event, project management event in the world, certainly one of the biggest. And so those volunteers are the ones who get the round of applause. So thank you everybody for attending. Don't forget to go and book your tickets for GPMF and block out the 19th, 20th, and 21st of September in Riyadh. I won't see you there, but there'll be plenty of my really good friends there to meet you and greet you, both from Saudi Arabia and from around the world. So thank you everyone for your time, and I look forward to speaking with some of you soon.
Thank you, Stuart, for this amazing session. Thank you.
Excellent. No, you're very welcome. Thank you, everyone. And are there any questions? I can stick around for a few minutes if anybody has questions. I haven't been able to keep tracking uh, the uh, the chat. Um, so if anybody wants to hang around and ask questions, we can do that. We can take you off mute and have a conversation. Um, but if not, great. Thank you everyone for joining. Really appreciate it.
I think we have only one question from Rukaya. Causalities, they are coming under stakeholders, right or not?
Let me just see, are there any, let me find the Q&A. Is there a Q&A button? There it is. Okay, so we don't have any open questions. That's fine. Everyone's shocked by how much information was jammed into an hour. A lot to cover. It's a lot of fun. Mohammed, are you looking to ask a question? Can we unmute Mohammed there?
Yes, he's allowed.
Hello.
Hi, Mohammed.
Hello, how are you? I
Good.
actually have a question on the change management, especially.
Yeah.
Um, when you're new in a project and came at the middle of it or after a quarter when it started, so there might be some messes in the whole project. I'm talking in the construction industry specifically. So you have your standards that sometimes meets the engineering standards. And when you see there, you might see that the standards are not as required, but you do have a schedule and it's chasing the timeline. So what is the best way? My question here is to change this without having much of clashes between the different stakeholders.
Great question. So, my experience is that and I'm going to steal. There's a lady in Australia whom I absolutely love. Amanda Oakenfull is her name, and she has run the delivery teams for all of IBM, for a chunk of Deloitte in Australia, for I think she was at KPMG at one point. So and she's called the mechanic because she turns around projects like that. When something's gone wrong, people call her in to turn them around. And I asked her your question exactly on a webinar 3, 4 years ago. And she basically said, all of the problems start and end with governance. So if so in that situation, I would start by making sure that you've got a handle on, do we know who can make what decisions? Do we know when we need to escalate? Are people making decisions? Do we have the information we need to make decisions? And one of those decisions might be around, right? So there's the change management process within the governance team. And fundamentally, that comes down to them helping them understand what the impact of decision making is on the project. There's a direct correlation between good, rapid decision making and successful outcomes. So fixing that decision making process, clarifying that decision making process makes everything easier. And usually there may be some resistance, to your point about change management. And very often, this is going to sound crazy, but very often a really nice pot of coffee or cookies or muffins or some culturally appropriate food that you bring to the meeting can change everything. You'd be amazed what executives will do for a cookie. And once they start coming to the meetings, if you have the structure and the information right, so don't overload them with too much data. Give them that assurance thing I was talking about. Make sure you're delivering them with the just the information and the insight that they need to make the decisions, right? Not a load of other data that's just a distraction, right? Don't give them that. You can have that on page 2, 3, 4, but page 1 should be about these are the decisions we're making, these are the benefits, these are the decisions, these are the key risks, and here's the information that you need to make those decisions. As soon as they feel that, your change management problem within the governance will go away. And in construction, if you can fix that, I suspect most of any other issues will go away as well. In software projects, it's a bit different because you've got stakeholders. The change management is often about users of the software and things like that. So you need to spend a bit of time on that in software projects. But for construction projects, you don't really have that user thing as much. Of course, you still have people who are going to work in the building and manage the building. But the main thing I would focus on is change management and fixing that governance process. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, every word makes sense. And actually, I was thinking the same thing. Although in the construction industry itself, you don't have the time to get that. You stated everything as I was thinking, actually, that the governance and the authority is the main key for the change and the framework of that governance. But
100%.
yeah, and I'm with you that maybe a cup of coffee in a meeting and this light in the air would give it a
Yep.
great appeal to the others to listen to you. Although, do you have the time? Because in the construction industry, everything is just so fast tracked, so pressuring. The timing that you want to explain, you're already ahead. They're already in their path. This where I'm stuck in actually. They're already pushing, pushing, pushing. So even
Yep.
if you explain that time is already being wasted and they're already going ahead and the clashes are already happening, like the issues are already happening. So, but I'm with you. But it's still at that point, even if the time is being consumed, you still have to do that because yes, you will suffer for some casualties for like a certain period of time, but at least you will pick it up from the middle.
And
This is where it
and the way I explain that to them, Mohammed, is, you can spend an hour up front on good governance, or you can spend 10 hours afterwards fixing something that's broken.
exactly,
Which would you rather
exactly.
do, right?
I choose the 1 hour for sure. It's
Absolutely.
actually, yeah. Thank you actually for saying that. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. Okay, cool. We've got a couple other questions as well. What's the difference between impact, value, benefit? Impact's one of those words that different people use differently, so I'm gonna ignore that one. I tend to use impact to mean the same thing as benefit. Value, again, it gets used a couple of different ways. There's sort of the normal everyday way of talking about value, in which case it's sort of the same as a benefit. But the formal way of talking about value around projects is that it's the was it worth it, right? So it's the benefit minus the cost, if you like. And it's a very difficult thing to measure in my view, because was it worth it as a question? Well, it depends what your benefits were and how you value those benefits. So I tend to think of impact as being very similar to the benefits, and then value officially is the value for money, or the benefit minus the cost of the project. So it's great that you delivered a benefit, but did you deliver more benefit than the project cost? That's kind of the technical difference between them. But people use those words in all kinds of different ways, Mohammed. And I would love it if everybody used them the same way, but the real world is that they don't. And the other question, oh, same from Mohammed as well.
We have asked a question. Also, yes, was from Maimuna also. Okay, you could answer the second question of Maham.
Perfect. How can I ensure
Everyone.
specific benefits realized from specific projects? Because we project or some
Hello.
other things. Aha. Ah, yes. Hi. Hello.
Hi. First of all, thank you for this webinar. I really have been waiting for it for since I received the email. Second thing, I work with a company, a British company that specializes in energy industry. What I want to know from you, and based on your experience, Mr. Stuart, is that I work in the commercial department. So I have the PMB and I am deeply interested with the project management. And from your background or your experience that is there a path career or is there a step that I may take? It will select to or it will lead me to work in a project rather than measuring the cost and defining the scope before the consultant team get into the start the project with the client.
So make sure I've understood the question. So is the question, how do I get go from the commercial side into the actual project management and execution side? Was that the question?
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, I think you've taken the first step already, which is that you've kind of decided that's something you want to do. And you know, it's a somewhat culturally dependent answer. So some cultures, some company cultures, they the organization wants to develop its people, and if that's your organization, I would just go have a conversation with your boss or the person who runs project teams and say, hey, listen, I'm interested in doing this. What training should I do? How can I get involved? If you're working for the kind of organization that doesn't do that, then I would book time on the 19th, 20th, and 21st of September to go to the GPMF and learn as much as you can from the people there, so that you're in a position to go and talk from knowledge, right? If you're going to people saying, I'd like to learn that, that's one thing. But if you go to them saying, I already understand these things, and by the way, I have an opinion, and that's going to be much more valuable. People are going to respond to that much better, I think. And if your organization really doesn't like people developing their careers, this is going to sound really harsh, but I would go and look for another job in an organization that does value you and value your professional development.
Well, I love my work. I am so comfortable in the environment, definitely. And it just that the way that I'm interested, and I'm deeply interested with the projects and the results and etc. So I will not. It's not even an option to look for another job. Definitely, I will stick with the commercial, and I will get myself develop into this department or into this path career specifically. But I just want to know that if there is any skills or any adjust or guidance based your experience, definitely, that you think it may really, when I get promoted, for example, and after that I may look for another
Yeah.
job, or maybe I will be accurate already with another company. But I meant, like, I would love to focus on skills. It depends on my current situation. So would
Yeah.
you guide me regarding this, please?
So I think there are two areas I would focus on. One would be formal project management type training. And GPMF is a really good place to start. Or you could reach out to, the PMI obviously does certifications. The PMP is kind of the gold standard for project management.
I have it already, yeah.
Perfect. So you got that. So I would, yeah. So if you've got PMP, I would go and get to GPMF and start to think about the business application of it.
Hmm.
And then the second thing is, if you're on the commercial side, you probably have a good feel for this already. But one area that many project managers don't develop enough is their business acumen, right? Is the understanding of the business itself, how the business works, what the problems are in the business, what the key big goals of the business are, and make sure that you understand what is the impact, what is the benefit of the project that you would be working on to the organization, and what are the processes that it's going to touch, and how do you make those better. So I speak to lots of project managers who are PMPs, and they're really good at the process, right? But they've no idea why they're doing it. And,
Yeah.
and to the business, that's no use, right? You need someone who can actually deliver the benefit, not just deliver the outputs.
Yeah, with a strong foundation of knowledge, definitely.
So
Thank
go
you.
and
Yeah.
go and talk to peers, go and talk to people in the business who run business units, and ask the run departments and ask them what are the problems you have, what do you wish you could do differently. Again, coffee, that always helps.
Yeah, in Saudi, we are admired for coffee, definitely. Thank
Absolutely.
you. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Thank you for your
Good luck.
time, and I
Good
really
luck.
appreciate it.
Good
Have a
luck.
good day. Bye bye.
Excellent. Very good. Um, let's see. Do we have time for more questions, or should we wrap it up? I'm not sure what the.
According to your time, for sure.
I'm sorry, say again.
According to your time. I think we have
Okay.
passed the time
All
by
right,
15 minutes.
let's do one more. I don't know if there's someone with a hand up, or we can pick one from the Q&A. What do you prefer?
Okay, from Q&A.
Perfect. Just reading the questions. Okay, so Mohammed's asked a really good question about how can I ensure the specific benefits realized from a specific project, because it could be from other projects or something else. So I'll give you a great example of this is Net Promoter Score, right? So customer satisfaction, basically. Customer satisfaction is affected by all kinds of things that have got nothing to do with your project. And the signal, the effect that these other things have on customer satisfaction are usually much bigger than anything your project can achieve on its own. So how do you measure the benefits? And I think this is where you go with this approach of measuring, it's impossible to measure the actual benefit in that kind of situation. But what you can try and do is identify specific leading indicators, right? So for example, if you have been collecting customer data, and one of the things that makes customers grumpy is that you've delivered the project late, right? So if you've done some research and you found that out, then if you reduce the number of late deliveries, you can be pretty sure that that's going to improve customer happiness, right? With your product and your service. So you can't actually measure the impact directly, but you can measure the impact on that thing, which is the late deliveries that drives unhappiness. And if you find enough of those things and you improve all of those things, then eventually you'll see that as a signal in the overall customer happiness. So sometimes it's really difficult, right? At no point did I say this was going to be an easy journey. But it is actually quite quick and easy to get the basics in place and to make a big improvement. Don't let some of those difficult edge cases scare you off. Take your brave pill and dive in and get started. Good stuff. All right, I think we should probably call
Yes.
it a day there. I want to thank you all again. Gosh, quite a few people still there. So thank you all for sticking around. And do reach out, do book time with me if you want to get started on benefits, but you're trying to figure out how to get going. And yeah, and have a great time at GPMF. I'm really jealous. I'm really jealous. Great. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Goodbye, everyone.